She is keep on helping our students to get into right job. Okay, if you have any doubts, you can ask her. Okay, now I hand over the session to Hema Mal. Hema.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Yes.
Thank you, sir, like for giving me this opportunity to present an session on big data and text analytics. This is Hema. Like I'm 2010 passed out from KCG College IT department. So, just it. This session is all about giving an introduction. Uh, so this is what we are going to see. We are going to see what is Hadoop ecosystem, and there are main components in the Hadoop like Apache Hive, Zookeeper, HBase, Spark, and in the end we will be seeing a demo on building and sentiment analysis system. So this will definitely help you to give a overview on how industries are using big data technologies, and you can start building your own project that will help you to get placed in a very good company. So this is the agenda. This is a simple cartoon indicating the importance of big data. So this is taken from Dilbert. So data is gold. We are living in the era of data. So here you can see like a company is ready to pay millions of dollars for their data. So as I mentioned, we are using so many devices today, like mobile, IoTs, smartwatches, and computer, email, Twitter, Facebook, social medias, etc., etc. Can you just imagine, like how many quantity of data we are generating in a day? See, this is just data taken from Rakur.net. This is infographics stating like how many tweets are sent in a day, how many emails are being exchanged, how many petabytes of data are being created in the Facebook. You can see the volume of data we are creating every day in the internet. So can you just imagine like how much volume of hard disks are required to store this data? And not only storing this data, but we should be in a position to get the information, or we want to retrieve the information quickly from such a huge amount of data. So these are the V's of big data. So they used to say volume, variety, velocity, veracity, value, variability, and these are the main 6 V's of big data. But there are lot more V's of big data, which I have given you. Nearly 42 V's are big data has been there. So volume, you can see from the previous infographics like how much volume of data we are generating from different sources in each day. And also there are different varieties of data. For example, structured, semi-structured, and unstructured data. Structured data is, I believe you would have studied in database, like where, for example, for an employee, the name, age, and all those things are in proper format. That is the structured data. And there is a category called as semi-structured data, wherein like it is not in the proper form, but still it has certain structure in it, but we cannot determine the full structure of the data. That is semi-structured. For example, XML, you can have your own entity. I believe people who have joined here like are in the pre-final here should be knowing about XML, right? This XML comes under semi-structured data, and there are unstructured variety of data wherein, for example, your system logs. You can see there is no proper format in it. So that comes under unstructured data. And velocity, you can just count within 1 minute how much amount of volume we are I mean how much volume we are generating at very fast rate, right? That is velocity, speed at which the data being generated. Within a minute we are generating petabytes of data. And also veracity, So there will be, if you are biased, or suppose if you like a particular actor, so those kind of bias will be added to the data. So that is veracity. There will be some additional noise, some unwanted context related data being present. That is the veracity. Value is what is the value you are providing from the data, business value, like sentiments and other things, and variability. So if you want to know what are the other ways of big data, you can just check this site. So now we have huge volume of data. So with that volume of data, what we are going to do now is the question, right? So we need to get some proper information out of that data. That's why data analytics comes into picture. So big data analysis, like that will help you to retrieve the information and get the value out of the data. So artificial intelligence. Sorry.
Hema, Hema, sorry for the interruption.
Yeah.
Hema, this is Bhaskar. Sorry for the interruption. Can you just admit Mr. Pawan sir and Dr. Dayusundari ma'am? He is waiting for the acceptance.
Oh, just a minute.
Some more students are also waiting.
I accepted now, sir. I think so. No one is
Ah,
waiting there.
okay, okay, Hema. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So we have a huge volume of data. Now we have to analyze those data. That's where machine learning and deep learning comes into picture. So again, the Dilbert comics represents the importance of analytics out of the data. So from this huge volume of data, retrieving the proper information is what is important in today's world. So we have various technique in machine learning and deep learning that will help us to do these kind of analysis within a fraction of seconds. I can show you like at the end of this demo, like you can see with the simple 10 lines of code, you can gather proper statistics out of those Twitter data. So you have been studying various subjects, right? Statistics and science and mathematics, and also some subjects in computer science, right? You may have you would have wondered like why we are studying so much, but all those things have applications in present world. Like for example, facial recognition, that is part of computer vision, and the chatbots are being created in almost, if you log on to any sites you will find a chatbot, right? So those kind of chatbot comes under a part of natural language processing, that is the text analysis. How even grammar and everything comes into place in NLP. And there are search engines like Google, which helps for retrieving the information. And also in robotics and all, right, we will be using AI widely. So this analytics being applied everywhere in all parts. So let's dive into Hadoop ecosystem. So why Hadoop? So we have a relational database like Oracle, but still Oracle does not support a huge volume of data, and also the kind of data which I mentioned earlier, right? The variety of data, the unstructured data. The relational database does not support those kind of unstructured data. So Hadoop platform comes into place to handle those kind of data. We are having huge amount of even your Twitter that is not in a proper format, right? So those kind of data can be processed quickly. Main point is the time at which the data can be retrieved or processed, that plays a vital role. So Hadoop solves all those issues which relational database fails. For example, like Hadoop fits into a data model where the data has to be written once and read many. So in this case, Hadoop is the best when compared to relational database. And also there are other features of Hadoop like data storage and analysis, which I was stressing the importance earlier. Like MapReduce comes into place where it is able to quickly analyze, even though if we have large volume of data like in terabytes or petabytes, with MapReduce you can solve those kind of problems within a minute. And also there is a platform like Hive and HBase where the relational database developers can also make use of it. And there are streams, right? Streams. Twitter is one such stream. So in Twitter we will be having a large volume of data streamed in a day. So stream processing is also easier in Hadoop. That is, Storm and Spark helps you to process those streaming data. And Yarn handles the resource management. And for searching, like web search engine and other things, Elasticsearch solves those kind of problems. And for AI and ML, right, as I was mentioning, right, analytics is very, very important in today's world. So Spark helps to solve that problem. This is the overall architecture. This slide is about the timeline at which Hadoop being developed. You would have wondered like why Hadoop is being famous in last decade is just because now the capacity to process and storage data is increased. Earlier, the normal storage would be like it will be in few kilobytes or megabytes, right? Now even our smartphones have capacity to store in gigabytes and terabytes, right? So that's how we progress. So as our storage capacity increases, similarly technology also evolves. So it started with a simple project by Doug and Mike. They wanted to have a Nutch crawler. Nutch is actually a web crawler. If you want to retrieve information from websites, that is the web crawler. And in 2002, they started that project. And after that, 2003, the Google released a paper called as GFS, Google File System Paper. So that changed the entire perspective of those developers. So they wanted to develop a distributed platform. I think so. Somebody is waiting in the lobby. Just a minute. I will just add them in. Sorry, like I just added some more participants who are waiting in the lobby. Yeah. So after 2004, right, the MapReduce research paper released. Both the Google file system as well as the MapReduce combined to produce a new technology or new ecosystem, that is the Hadoop. In 2006, Hadoop is released, which changed the entire industry. Like you can you can process zettabyte of data within few days. And also Yahoo they demonstrated how just by running a two clusters of 1,000 Hadoop nodes, they were able to process millions of data. And after that, subsequent projects were evolved out of that. Like for example, Spark, and Spark changed the entire industry after Hadoop. And there are other ecosystem projects. Nearly more than I guess around 90 Apache projects are in place now. And 2018, Hadoop 3.1 released. That is different when compared to the one which was released in 2006. The entire architecture changed now. Like we are using Hadoop 3.1, but Hadoop, the first version has had a different architecture, and slowly they evolved into a new one. So that can be compared with the speed of Spark. So this is the just an history of Hadoop. So what we have in Hadoop ecosystem is, this slide gives you a sample only. I cannot say all the ecosystems are covered here, but in order to develop a pipeline or analytic pipeline, I have covered most of the important projects in Apache. So let's begin. Like The Linux, so prerequisite to start any Hadoop development or Hadoop administration is Linux. You should have some basic knowledge how to operate in Linux. Some of the basic commands like copy, move, cat, etc. Those kind of knowledge is enough. But it is better to have good amount of command knowledge. For example, AWK is there, SED is there. So those kind of knowledge is prerequisite for starting Hadoop. So once this Apache Kafka and Apache NiFi, Scoop, Flume, Storm, these are all comes under data ingestion. Data ingestion is how we feed the data into the Hadoop platform. So these are some of the tools which will help in data ingestion. And MapReduce and HBase and HDFS, this comes under processing. So this plays a vital role in the Hadoop core part. And for machine learning, we will be using Spark machine learning, Spark MLib is there, and also Python deep learning libraries are there, which we can use it to, which we can use in the pipeline. And there are other things like Woozy. This will help in scheduling the jobs. As you can see, like most of the ecosystem as an animal as a logo. Do you know? Have you ever wondered why? It's all because with how Hadoop has been named as the founder, the duck cutting son playing with an elephant. So that elephant name is Hadoop. So he named it as an Hadoop in with the elephant symbol. So all the ecosystem which evolved in the Hadoop frameworks as a logo of an animal. So to manage all these animals, we need a zookeeper, right? It is like a zoo, and a zookeeper is needed for coordination. And other things is visualization. Yeah. After you make an analysis or applying your machine learning algorithms and other stuffs, you need to visualize that in the front end. For that, Kibana is a very useful tool. So these are some of the important tools in the Hadoop ecosystem. For to start into analytics or to get into data science or machine learning, these are the prerequisites. You need to be strong in linear algebra, probability, calculus. These are the main mathematical topics which is very important in the field of analytics. And other technology would be like Python or Java for programming stuffs. Most of the machine learning libraries present today is in Python. Maybe in later, like it is moving to Julia. Maybe like Python is sufficient. And for deep learning and all, right, we will be highly using Python. And Spark uses Scala, but that is very minimal percentage. So Python and Java is very important, and Hadoop is written in Java, and some of the machine learning algorithms are developed in Python. So understanding machine learning algorithm will take time, but implementing those, once you have understood the algorithm, it is very easy to implement those algorithm. Just you have to invoke those libraries and implement with the code. I will show you in the end. So I have provided you two links where these two links will help you to get started into machine learning and become a data scientist in 3 to 4 months. Any questions so far? Okay. So now let's start into Hadoop. Hadoop is the core component, right, in the big data ecosystem. So Hadoop has 4 services. One is Hadoop distributed file system, and there is a MapReduce part, there is Yarn and Hadoop Common. I am talking about Hadoop 2 version. I am not talking about the Hadoop 1 version because Yarn was introduced in Hadoop 2 because the resource manager. The Hadoop 1 architecture was entirely different from 2. So let's concentrate on what is there in the present. Okay. So Hadoop follows master slave architecture. So master is our main node where there will be few more processes running in. As I mentioned earlier, like you should have some knowledge about Linux and as well as OS. So in Linux operating system, everything will run as a process thread. I hope you would have studied operating systems in your curriculum, right? So those process and process ID and those details are very, very important if you want to work in Hadoop. So kindly just brush up if you want to, start into Hadoop, all those concepts. So resource manager is one such process. So what resource manager will do is it will allocate the resources needed for each of the slave nodes, and there will be a name node to maintain. Name node is just like a registry. Okay, what is the slave node names and other things? It's just master node is just as the terminology goes, right? So master is like it will just maintain the things. So the slave nodes will actually do the work. So in slave node also there will be 2 to 3 processes involved. I will explain you later. So the Hadoop distributed file system is the storage. So data is partitioned and splitted and stored across the slaves. And MapReduce is the computation part, where if you want to compute on the data, right, storing alone is not sufficient, right? We have to do some kind of operation on the data. So MapReduce helps to perform those kind of computation. And there is a yarn, which is the resource manager, and there is Hadoop common process is there, that is utilities. So in utilities, like literal meaning as it goes, right, it is kind of common functionality required by all the nodes. Okay. I think so. One more person is waiting in the lobby. Just a minute, I will add her. Okay. So HDFS, right? Hadoop distributed file system. It is inspired from Google file system, right? So distributed technology comes into place, like where you have a large volume of data and you are not able to store that in a single system. That's where the distributed file system helps you. Okay. So the data is splitted and the minimum amount of data is known as block. So each block of data will be stored and retrieved in Hadoop. You can term it as the smallest unit of data each program interacts with. Okay, so no, by default the size is 128 MB. No less than 128 MB of data will be passed in any kind of transactions. So this is an example. For example, if your TXT file is 700 MB, it will be splitted into blocks of data, chunks of data. So 128, 128, 128, and the remaining 60 MB. So out of 128 MB, only 60 MB of data is present in that block, F block. In the F block, only 60 MB is present, but still the full size would be 128 MB. So you can change this default settings in an XML file. I can show you in the demo part. So data is stored in the distributed manner. For example, as I was explaining you the architecture, right? We have different slave nodes and data are stored in each of the nodes. Okay. So there are two main daemons are nothing but the process. Okay. There are two process, name node and the data node. These two are very, very important to understand the concept of Hadoop. Name node is like it manages the file system namespace. If you log into any Hadoop or Hadoop system, or even the Linux system, right, there will be a root folder slash, right, slash root slash the username, etc. That is known as the namespace. And those kind of namespace, file systems namespace, is being managed by the name node. Name node will also contain the metadata. Metadata is data about the data. For example, if you have a chunk of students data, so there will be like what is the size of the data, where it is located, and what kind of data is present. Those details are known as metadata, data about the data. So those kind of metadata and the file system structure are being stored in the name node. So data node is the actual place where your data is stored. Data node process helps you to retrieve those blocks of data to the name node. So these two daemons are very, very important in HDFS. I hope it is clear. So as I was mentioning, name node contains information like which block location or a permission, which block is stored in which node, what is the permission. Permission is read, write, execute, etc. If you have worked on Linux, this will be easier, right? So and yeah, this goes into a little bit into detail. Like it will store informations like fs image and edit log, file system image and edit log. File system image contains complete namespace of the Hadoop file system, the full location. You can just imagine, you can equate namespace to the slash var slash log, or in Windows if you see your path, right, that is the namespace. Just equate namespace with that. And edit log contains what are the changes you are performing to that file. So these two are very, very important in the name node. So why we are saying the Hadoop as fault tolerant is because of these kind of features. So even if anything, any failure occurs, even if your disk is failed, one disk is failed, we can retrieve those data using these two files. And there are other demands like secondary name node. It will just a helper to the primary name node. So daemons are nothing but the process, right? So this will run as a separate process. So this process will help in case if primary name node fails. And there is a checkpoint node. Checkpoint node is for checking whether that namespace is created. So this kind of mechanisms will help you to, in case of any hard disk failure, or the service fails, those kind of problems it will handle. So just this is just an example of what is namespace I'm talking about, and how it is stored with data node. So you may wonder like why I was talking in detail about those internal files, right? It's only because of, to stress the importance of how this architecture helped Hadoop to achieve the fault tolerance. What is fault tolerance? When there is any, any data is missed, or if a node is unable to answer, then the replicated data blocks will be copied from the other nodes. So there will be number of copies. For example, I can show you, right? I was explaining you. Yeah. In this example, if you see the 700 MB of data is split into nearly 6 chunks of data, right? Each of the chunk will be stored with the replication factor of 3, meaning the block A will be stored in 3 different places. So that is called as fault tolerance. So whenever any data is failed, or any data is lost, its replication, its copy will be used. So there is a configuration called as replication factor that will decide how many number of copies should be present in a cluster. So this is typically a data center. This image represents the data center of, I think it is Google, I guess. I don't remember. So if in most of the companies, right, you will have data centers like this. So where servers will be placed in a rack. So each of this, you could see, right, a thin differentiation between each of the rack. So this represent rack, and this is the server. Whatever we are imagining, right? If you have logged into any of the cloud service providers like AWS or Azure or Google Cloud, right, they would be giving you a machine, right, some kind of server, or some virtual machine. All those machine will be present in the data center, right? So these data center, right, will have large number of racks. So in Hadoop, there is a concept called as rack awareness, where data will be placed in a in the rack that is nearby. That is called as rack awareness. For example, if you are keeping a replica of data in this rack, there will be another copy will be placed in the next rack. Why is it so? Is if this switch, consider this is the architecture, right? There will be, this is one track, this is one track, this is one track. So in case if this switch fails, we will not be able to retrieve the data present in the rack 1. So in order to avoid those kind of issues, the data will be replicated in rack 1, rack 2, and as well as rack 3. This is known as, rack awareness. The data will be placed in a nearby rack and also retrieved from the nearby rack. So this is bit, this is from the industry point of view, but it is good to know these kind of data center concept and rack and other things. And there is one more concept called as horizontal scaling. So there is a difference between horizontal scaling and vertical scaling. So what is vertical scaling is, in suppose if you have a system of, let's say, 16 GB RAM, okay, and if you are increasing that 16 GB RAM to 32 GB RAM, that is called as vertical scaling. You are increasing the RAM or any hardware components within a single system, right? You are increasing only the, in a single system you are increasing the capacity. That is vertical scaling. But that is not the concept of Hadoop. Hadoop supports horizontal scaling, meaning, suppose if you have 16 GB of RAM and 200 GB of hard disk, etc. Similarly, like you will be additionally adding 2 to 3 more systems with same capacity. That is called as horizontal scaling. I hope this is clear, right? Rack awareness and horizontal scaling. And this is how you can read and write from HDFS. Okay, the client actually usually sends request to name node, and name node in turn will contact to the data node to retrieve the data. This is how the interaction goes. The name node will respond with number of blocks or where it is, if it is a write operation, or if it is a read operation, it will send the actual location where the data has to be read. So these kind of things will happen parallelly within fraction of seconds. That's how they have written their algorithm, or the process will work like that. And next comes the important concept called as map reduce. Map reduce is like how the data is being processed in the distributed environment. So there is a two process will be there, mapper and the reducer. So mapper will read the blocks of data and it will produce key value pass. I will show you an example of word count now. And the reducer will take those key value pairs and then aggregates. So the mapper and reducer will work together, and the output will be, the intermediate results will be stored in the disk, and the output will be, given for the user. So this is an example how the map reduce works. This is an simple example for word count. Suppose if you want to count the number of words in a document or any text file, this is the typical hello world for Hadoop. If you want to test any kind of, if you want to start any kind of programming in Hadoop related ecosystem, word count is the hello world. Similar to how you are doing with the programming language hello world. So word count is like in a document, you have to count the number of words. Okay. So this is the input document. And in the first phase of mapper, the words are splitted. You can see like it is splitted into 4 blocks. And in the mapping phase, like it will be indexed. I mean, it will be sorted out. And then this SQL1 and SQL1, since the count of SQL is 2, it is then combined. Similarly, DW is 1. Similar to that, this is the combining phase. Once first the data will be splitted, mapped, and then combined. This is the mapper. And after combining, it will be shuffled and sorted. Why we need to sort is like the word that has more number of occurrence, right? That will be placed at the bottom. And in the reducer takes this key value. Key is the word and the value will be the count. So there will be so many number of mappers being executed parallelly. So you can see like data is being distributed into blocks, chunks of data, and mapper will be applicable to those chunks, and it will reduce that to key value pass. reducer will take that key value and then give the output. This is a simple flow of MapReduce. I hope this is clear. Any doubt? Okay. So next comes the next component, that is Yarn, yet another resource negotiator. So Yarn was introduced in Hadoop 2 and now the version is Hadoop 3. In Hadoop 3 also there are a few more changes has been placed, but main thing which made the Hadoop fault tolerant is Yarn. So Yarn is yet another resource negotiator. It mainly handles all the resource management, job scheduling, etc. So once in the previous thing, like the name node, there is a master node and the slave node, right? So if the name node fails, right, the entire architecture collapsed. So to overcome all those issues, they introduced some of the features in Hadoop 2. So they added another name node to take over and all those things. So Yarn is like the resource manager and the node manager application for entire cluster. So it will allocate, its main purpose is to schedule in the slaves, resource management and job scheduling. Those are the main purpose of Yarn. So again, Yarn has different processes like scheduler, application manager. So scheduler, as the name goes, it will just responsible for allocating the resources during the runtime, right? Based on the CPU available and the memory available. So it will allocate the resources to corresponding nodes. So main advantage of Hadoop is like you need not require a high-end system. Even your data nodes can be of very low configuration, still the Hadoop will perform better. And application manager is responsible for doing, in the previous example I was explaining you about the word count, right? So word count is one such application. So application manager is responsible for starting those word count program or any other applications and doing the performance. And there is application master that will, application master will run per application. So word count is one application. Similarly, we can perform many kind of analytics, which I was mentioning, right, on the data that was stored in Hadoop. So application manager is just, it will start the application and it will handle the life cycle of those application. For example, you have to execute it and all those things, right? Whereas the application master, right, it will just negotiate the resources needed for that application, and then it will work with the node manager to execute those tasks. So as the name goes, application master is just for resource allocation to the application, etc. So this is a simple architecture. So client is, we can say like word count, in the word count example, right? So client is a Java program will be there. So we will write a Java program and submit it to the command prompt. The resource manager will take that job and allocates to the node manager. Container is nothing but the environment in which your program is executing. And application master will be allocated for each of the jobs being submitted. And this is the overall architecture. So as soon as the resource manager like allocates the resources to the corresponding node manager, the node manager will start executing the application. Once the application successfully runs and gets the output, the result will be sent back to the client. So this is the architecture. I hope Hadoop is clear. Now let's get into Hive. Hive is next component. You can imagine, right, for simple word count, right? You have to write, large volumes of code. For even, in the MapReduce, main disadvantage is you have to be a programmer in order to solve any kind of problems that big data problems, right? You have to solve only through programming, using MapReduce. So in order to avoid that, right, since we are, our main purpose is to make our job easier, right? So Hadoop has various eco components to make our life easier. One such component is Hive. So Hive, you can relate that to a relational database. So it is mainly a data warehouse system. So if you are good in SQL, right, then you can easily work with Hive. Hive is mainly used for the reporting, analyzing all those analyzing purpose and reports, summarization, etc. Hive is best candidate for such kind of problem, and it has internally what it will do is you will write the query and it will have engine that will translate that query into MapReduce job. So you need not worry of need not worry about how to develop the program and how to write mapper, reducer, what will be the input, what will be the output, and so on. So if you know SQL, you can easily become a Hive developer. And analytics is the key, right? So Hive gives you an interface through which you can interact with the data very easily, and all those jobs will be handled by Hive internally. So you need not worry about the code. So that's the main advantage of Hive. So this is the simple architecture of Hive. I don't want to go into detail about this, but these are the main components. Main thing is the metadata and the meta store, where table schema, right? If you relate this with relational database concepts, meta store is like schema. So it will store the schema, and internally, as I was mentioning, it will all the queries will be compiled into MapReduce job finally. So meta store is the metadata. So schema, right? If you creating a table, the schema will be stored in the meta store. For example, if you are creating a table for students, there will be metadata like name, class, etc. Those kind of metadata will be stored in the meta store. The driver is another process that is used for receiving the Hive QL statement, Hive query language, right? And once the Hive queries are converted into the MapReduce job, then the executor will perform the MapReduce internally. So the compiler part does the transformation of your query into MapReduce. And that's it. These are all, the other daemons are just for user interface. This is CLI for submitting your queries and etc. Next comes the important component called as Zookeeper. So similar to, as I was mentioning, right, Hadoop, Hive, everything is an animal. So to maintain all those animals, we need a zookeeper. So that's what, as the name goes, zookeeper is a coordination service to manage different eco components running in a cluster. So there are Hadoop, there is Hive, there is Scoop, Oozie, etc., etc. So there are so many components running in a same node. Let's say a 5 node or a 10 node of cluster running in your test environment. So it will be difficult to manage all those different nodes, right? The same properties should be applied across different 10 nodes and etc. So to solve that problem, Zookeeper was introduced. So Zookeeper is the coordination service. If two services wants to communicate with each other, Zookeeper will help to communication. It will help to communicate those two services. Communication among those two services. So if suppose Hive wants to communicate to MapReduce, and which is the URL for the data node, etc. Zookeeper will help you to get those information and provides those to the Hive, etc. So Zookeeper is the main coordination services in the distributed environment. So it can be run either in the standalone mode, it means a single node, as well as the quorum. Quorum is a group of servers. So even if one node fails, there will be another node that will be chosen as a master. So this is the main architecture of Zookeeper. So there will be some servers, there will be some clients, and leader will be elected based on a round robin algorithm. So we need not worry how it internally it chooses the leader and follower. So Zookeeper will handle all those perfectly for you. So Zookeeper's responsibility is for updating the node status, whether, for example, in a cluster, suddenly one slave node fails and we are submitting one job to be executed, right? So at that time, Zookeeper will help to identify which node is dead and where to find the data and all those information Zookeeper will provide to the map reduce or whatever job that is being run. And it will also help to for in case of any failures and for managing the cluster. And if you want to name the service, a unique id will be placed internally for each and every node. So those kind of naming service also Zookeeper will perform. So these are the main functionalities of Zookeeper. Next comes the HBase. So HBase is it's NoSQL database. Why we need a NoSQL database? I in the I guess you would be knowing, right? As I was mentioning before, there is if there is no structure in the data, for example, log data or Twitter, whatever you tweet, or in the Facebook, those kind of unstructured data, right? In order to save all those unstructured data, NoSQL database will help you a lot. And also in terms of performance, and also you know uh, provide you analysis and other things, this kind of NoSQL database will help you a lot. So HBase is one such component. There are another NoSQL database like Cassandra, which is widely used, and all will be based on same concept. Like there will be a all are column oriented database provided, meaning like there will be a column family to identify. For example, in a same table, we can store data from different sources. For example, if you are storing multiple data from different, if there are 5 colleges, let's say Hindustan, KCG, and one more college is there. If you want to store all those data in a single table, right? You can use column family name and save it in the same data. I mean same table. For example, KCG can be identified with a column name as KCG followed by student's name, etc. So these kind of column family will help you a lot to save spaces, as well as the purpose of reusing. The reusability is one main concept in software paradigm. So HBase will help you to solve all those things. You can relate HBase tables similar to the Oracle tables, and there will be a row key to identify each rows uniquely, and there will be columns and column families, etc. So main services in HBase are HMaster and Region Server Zookeeper. So this is a simple architecture. So Zookeeper is the mandatory for HBase. Similarly, there will be HLog, Region Server. So Region Server is similar to having different data nodes, right? Similarly, there will be different regions where your single table will be stored in different regions. For example, this table bar is stored in different regions, because even if this node fails, we can retrieve the data from this node. So this is the advantage. And also, like uh, if you want to retrieve a particular column, okay, you need not query all the data nodes. You can query, if suppose if you are querying for student's name, if the student's name column is saved in this region, not in this region, means the Zookeeper will help this client to know, like, the name is stored in this region. So based on that, the data will be queried in this region alone. So it will save time. That's the main purpose. So DDL is data definition language, similar to your relational database. These are components of HBase. So So next component is Spark. So Spark entirely changed the big data platform. So after Spark into picture around 2016, I believe, like everybody started using Spark over Hadoop. So Spark internally, like had lot of performance improvements in terms of performance improvements, and Spark introduced a new paradigm like when compared to Hadoop. So Spark is in memory, so it processes the data internally in a memory. So it helps to perform large number of actions in a shorter time frame. So that's why like industry got attracted towards Spark over Hadoop. Now Hadoop is also changed with Hadoop 3. Again, people are started migrating to use Hadoop as well. So Hadoop in the Spark, right? The main data unit is called as RDDs, resilient distributed data set. Resilient. What's the term resilient means? Meaning is fault tolerant, right? So this kind of smallest chunk of data is RDDs. The data frames are stores the data in RDD blocks. So it is distributed across multiple nodes, and the data is partitioned as RDD. So this is a simple. Sorry. So you are creating an RDD. I mean, the data is divided into RDD. Some transformations can be applied over RDD. For example, like slicing, or if you want to add two numbers, etc. Those kind of transformations are possible. And moment those transformation is done, their results can be calculated and given to the client. This is the most important concept in Spark. So this is the overall architecture of Spark. So whenever you are writing any program, right, the driver will get, for example, the same word count. The Spark context will be created. Context is nothing but an object. Just imagine like in Java, right, you have an object. So similarly, there will be a object created to handle that word count problem or any kind of jobs. Okay, so it breaks the job into tasks, multiple tasks, and each of this will be executed in the worker node. So worker node will have executors, and executor is a process which performs the task. For example, the counting of words. In the previous example, right, we have word count, right? So similarly, it will count the number of words in each of the RDDs. And finally, the data will be present to the Spark context. Sorry. Sorry, got struck. Yeah. So these are the main components present in Spark: the core API and computing engine. There is a machine learning library present in Spark, which makes the Spark more attractive. And also there is a graphics for handling graph processing problems, etc. These are the main ecosystem present in Spark. So Spark runs on Yarn. So far, like we have seen so many ecosystems, right? Now let us tie all those things together. How this is useful in the industry, or how you can practically build a system. That is, if you want to analyze some tweets or feedback, or you would be seeing lot of reviews in the Amazon, and you want to determine the sentiment, etc. Right? How you can build such kind of ecosystem using these kind of libraries or this kind of projects, right? So the end users data feed, we have to write an any API kind of stuffs to gather feedback from systems such as Twitter, Facebook, or whatever social media which you are planning to gather those twitters tweets or Facebook from the Facebook etc using some kind of services. If you are good at Python or good at Java, right, you can write your own services to collect the data. Once collected, right, it can be saved in the HDFS, correct? So after HDFS you can run an high query to get the analytics out of it, and you can visualize that in Elasticsearch. So this is the overall architecture, right? So where you can apply your deep learning model as well. So you can train your chatbot from the data being stored in the HDFS or Hive, etc. I will show you an example shortly. So how NLP is used, right? For language translation in Google, you would have seen like if you type in any language, it is being translated to another language. How these things are possible is using NLPs. So you need some machine learning models to translate, etc. And there are sentiment analysis, and there are question and answering, right? The chatbot, you will ask some questions and you will get the feedback. So those kind of, to solve those question and answering problem, as well as information extraction, and if you want to perform the sentiment analysis for solving all those problems, we can use these kind of platforms to build such a system, right? And this is a simple architecture, like where I have used a BERT model. BERT is a deep learning model published by Google. So that can be used to build a classifier to classify the sentiments. These are the main applications of text analytics. Let's go into the demo part. Before that, there is a YouTube link provided, right? If you have time, just go through this link. I will be sharing this link in the chat window as well. So this is this chatbot we built in our company. Let's go into the demo part. So this is Hadoop cluster which we are running. We have installed using Ambari, as I was mentioning, right? Ambari is the one that manages all these components, and Zookeeper is the coordination service. Hadoop is there. So easiest way to deploy your Hadoop cluster is using Ambari, and I will share you the links required to set up an Hadoop architecture, Hadoop cluster, and also how to run a MapReduce job, and as well as like Spark jobs, etc. This is the Ambari server, so where you can see like the data being stored over each node. It gives an easier interface, like how the data is being stored on each of the node, etc. So you can see like the zookeepers, and also if you want to see the yarn UI, right? This is how the jobs will be submitted in yarn, and the primary owner will be mentioned over here. So you can check the status, what is the logs, etc. over here. And there will be Kafka is messaging system, Spark is there, and also Elasticsearch. Kibana is for visualization. If you want to create a rich dashboard, you can use Kibana.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you can create
Alamin.
visualization very easily using Kibana. This is the UI, and if you want to see any particular component, you can go to this Ambari UI and manage those things. And also to build a Twitter sentiment analysis, right? You need to sign up a Twitter account, and once you have the Twitter account, you can create an app in the Twitter, and you have to get those. There are 4 important aspects, that is consumer key, secret, token, and token secret. So once you create an app, Twitter will provide you those consumer key, secret, and token, etc. If you are struggling to find those kind of things, please ping me back. So I will give you the instructions how to get those keys, etc. from your Twitter account. Kindly do not share those keys to anybody else because it is a paid one. So what you need to do a simple Twitter analysis is you need to install, this is Colab, by the way, sorry, forgot to tell you. This is the Colab provided by Google for free, where you can run any kind of machine learning algorithms or any kind of, if you want to perform any analytic task, you can use Colab easily. And this is for provided for free. Even GPU, graphics, right, graphic card, those kind of things also provided by Google for free. So you can make use of it. And thing is, if you install, you require few libraries from Python, that is Pandas, VP, VADA sentiment for sentiment classification. As I was mentioning, writing a code in machine learning is very simple. So here I am doing the authentication part. So instead of machine learning, let's try to find what is the sentiment for our college, or if you want to, let's try to run this. Actually, before I ran for machine learning, like gathering the Twitter, yeah, I think so. There were few tweets on May 1st about KCG CSR activity. Let's predict the sentiment of those. So this NLTK is a Python library for performing your NLP tasks. It's a neutral tweet. You can see this is the output. Like negative is this is a probability. So these 2 tweets about KCG college is neutral. This is a simple way by which you can build a sentiment analytics system. That's it from my end. So these are some of the resources which you can use, like Hadoop. This is a good book to read, and there is a Cloudera and Hortonworks documents will be there, and deeplearning.ai is for analytics, and there is a NLP, Stanford NLP course is there that will help you to understand natural language processing in detail. Any questions? That's it. I'm done, sir. Any questions?
Thanks, Kema. It's a wonderful session. Actually, it is covered the entire syllabus, like first unit, second unit, like that. Students, any queries so far? Hello, students. Yeah, if any queries, you can ping me personally and let you know. Okay. I thank the faculty members, Dr. Amrita ma'am, Dr. Claudine sir, Associate Dean, Placement Officer, Adeline ma'am, Manju ma'am, and thanks for the resource person. Thanks, Emma.
Thank you, sir. Yeah.